Tourette's podcast is not a medical advice show. It's a show about experiences. In the course of that, we may talk about medications or therapies or stories from the doctor's office, but don't mistake any of that for medical advice or direction. It's not. Get that only from people or places licensed or certified to give it. Not from a massively fun and action-packed podcast about our life experiences. Such as...
I'd have an interview with Mick Jagger, and then reluctantly, okay, I'm going to watch this. And I'm not listening to the interview. I'm like, can you see my tick? Can you see my tick?
This is Tourette's podcast, made possible with support of the Tourette Association of America and part of the Geeks Rising Network. Welcome to Season 6 of Tourette's podcast. Once you get to Season 6, it starts to sound kind of prolific, and I'm not trying to sound all cocky here. I'm just happy with the support the show has received, more all the time, which is a credit to you. Coming up on, I think, 90 episodes of Tourette's podcast. This might be the 90th. Anyway, we've got a catalog going, and more people are finding the podcast all the time. Thanks for your emails and comments and reviews. The Tourette Association of America is continuing as the primary sponsor here. They're really making this possible. This is episode 1 of season 6, and simultaneously, I've released episode 0, as is traditional here, featuring some comments and questions you've sent in to tourettespodcast@gmail.com or through one of the social media accounts. I also talk about why my voice is so shot right now. There's also details in episode 0 about an event I will be emceeing on October 29th. Please join me and the Tourette Association for the 2020 Virtual Gala. No matter where you are, you can be there. You don't have to rent a tuxedo. It's a big fundraising event with a lot of cool stuff that you can access from your home. It's all virtual, an auction, entertainment, cool guests, tourette.org/gala for info. Tickets on sale October 15th, and I'm going to keep plugging this. Thank you for being here for episode 1 of the new season with a guest I am so stoked to have here. Adam Curry. People my age and older, of course, know him as one of the most memorable VJs on MTV in the late 1980s, but these days the nickname that follows him around is the Podfather, because he's responsible for the medium you're listening to right now. Who invented podcasting? Look it up. Adam Curry. He's host of the podcast No Agenda, which, by the way, thank you, Adam, for mentioning Tourette's podcast on No Agenda. Adam has mentioned TS to his co-host, John C. Dvorak, a few times before, but he goes into detail here that I think is unprecedented for him. How this came together, a short time ago, he was the guest on the Joe Rogan Experience, one of the most heard podcasts on the planet. And right off the bat, they talk a little bit about Tourette. And if you watch the video version of that episode on YouTube, it's obvious. You can see him ticking throughout, but what he told Joe at the outset was that, look, here's what I've got, and if you get it out there, get it out of the way, you can talk more comfortably because the self-consciousness and the question marks about the behavior just kind of go away, which I loved. And I was like, okay, I got to talk to Adam. So he really goes into it here. His life with TS. We talk about the birth of podcasting a little bit, and Tourette Syndrome played a role in it, which you will hear about, along with the curious intersection of tics and television. We've spoken with a few television personalities in the past who have TS, and it's really sincerely interesting listening to Adam talk about that, how he made it work. We get to learn what a gidget is, and how he's converting me away from using a smartphone and returning to the world of flip phones. Seriously, that's in progress right now. I picked one out, and I'm excited to get away from the din of smartphone notifications. Even silent notifications are still notifications, and if you're Captain ADHD like I am, then maybe you understand why, but there's more to it, and Adam explains that angle for him. We do a lot of joking around here. Don't take us too seriously. I know we usually run a clean facility here, but I'll put a PG-13 stamp on this one. Bottom line, this is a really great pump up for the positives of Tourette Syndrome, the superpower of it, and I'm not saying that in a cheesy way, generic feel-good kind of way. Like, we really go into that. And I'm saying it generally because it's not always a fun time having Tourette, painful tics that really affect your ability to do what you want to do in life. But again, generally speaking, there's a lot of worry that goes into TS that, generally speaking, doesn't need to exist. This is a really quotable episode. It's fun, and I'm going to give my ailing vocal cords a rest and let you get to it. Here's me with Adam Curry. But yeah, this is really cool, man. Thanks for doing this.
Well, I didn't even know this podcast existed until you, I think you tagged me in a tweet.
Yeah, that's right. It started around, I guess, the early part of 2018, after a lot of thought. And, I'm 40 years old now. I was 38 when I started it. And I'd lived a whole life with TS, just not talking about it being basically ashamed of it, and just wanting to find a way to connect with other people. And podcasting was in my skill set. So it's like, why not? I'll just try it.
That's very interesting. I mean, I actually hadn't even heard of the acronym TS, to be honest. I mean, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
But have we started? Are we consider this the beginning?
if you want to, I'm recording just for the safety, so I don't forget. But we could just flow into it if we want. Yeah,
let's do that, because I listened to the episode with the sommelier.
Oh yeah, 80.
And that blew me away. It was, I mean, this was, I'm like, holy crap, he's saying stuff that I've thought all my life. Hold on a second, actually. Here it is. Do you mind if I just play this clip? Because I played it on my own podcast. Yeah, listen to this.
People who have Tourette Syndrome, when they find something that they seriously enjoy doing, and it's kind of that really big passion, because we have so much excess energy that would otherwise go into those tics, it diverts itself straight and redirects itself straight into whatever that passion is.
So when I heard that, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. And how when I'm really focused on something, I'm not aware of any ticking. I don't think I do very much of it. And so, and I thought about the energy part, and because I really have to eat. I have to eat more than I probably would like to, just to keep my weight up. And now that I think about it, all this energy is going into ticking around like that. So that made total sense to me. Also, obviously the connection with OCD makes a lot of sense. And then this last part, I really was blown away by it.
And so we end up putting all that extra focus and all that extra energy into that one thing, which just completely sets us apart from everyone else. We just raise the bar because all that energy goes into fulfilling our goal. The messaging that I'm putting out across all these articles, it's Tourette syndrome is not a weakness, it's a superpower.
Exactly, a superpower. And I've joked about this with friends before. I say, well, the superpower actually manifests itself in different ways. What I'm really good at is catching something, reflexes. If you knock over a glass at the table, I'll catch it halfway to the ground. It's the weirdest thing.
I do the same thing, yeah.
Do you have that too? Where it's like, that's your thing. You go, patch, I can catch flies.
I have
catch
this
flies.
Yeah, I've got this reflex where, so for one, I'm really good at knocking things over, but I'm also good at recovery. So I have this like reflex with my foot. It's almost like a soccer reflex where I can just kind of catch it and soften the fall if it's going to hit the ground. But I am really good at just kind of like my reflexes are on and I'm just ready for it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's a part of it. And it was just really interesting. Because I've always talked very openly about Tourette's on my podcast, which is now 13 years, because I found that just talking about it, and my co-host, John C. Dvorak, he's very interested. So, and because you talk about it, then it doesn't become a big deal. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. And then everything kind of relaxes and it gets much better, and you can focus more on what you're saying and not like, oh my God, I don't want to tick, or I'm trying to stop whatever thing is going on. And wow, podcasts make so much sense to have a podcast with people talking about their tics. It's so therapeutic. Just listening to it, I felt really good.
That's so cool. And it's funny that you say that, because I mean, that's exactly kind of how this came together. I've wanted to talk to you for a long time. But, you were just on the Joe Rogan Experience, and what you said on there, I was like, okay, I got to message him. You said during your talk with him, and it was in the first couple of minutes of that conversation, I think, about Tourette syndrome and how just kind of getting it out there and acknowledging it can take the pressure off. You don't have to worry quite so much about ticking and what everyone around you might be thinking. And I got to ask, because I totally agree with you, but that took me a long time to realize that I can just kind of diffuse it by putting it out there and just kind of, you take the pressure off of it. You don't have to hide it quite as much. But I grew up kind of masking everything and trying to hide it because, of shame, and I was embarrassed. And didn't want to disenfranchise myself and I didn't want to not have a girlfriend or whatever. When did that hit for you? I mean, that if you just kind of get it out there, some of the pressure comes off.
That really came probably 8 years ago. So I was 48. And it's when I started talking about it on the show. I mean, I'd have conversations, with friends or whatever, and say, what's going on with that? So, no, here, this is what happened. And then we wouldn't really talk about it. And it got to the point where I started talking about it on the show. And then I got really comfortable talking to friends about it. In particular, some friends here in Austin, and one of their sons developed a tic. I don't think it was really Tourette Syndrome, but it's just something going on with him.
Yeah.
And I said, well, my advice is just get it out there, just help him talk about it. And they jumped in with 2 feet because, they were looking at medication and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure even he has full on Tourette syndrome. I'm not sure, but just get him to talk about it. And they did. And actually it went away. And I think, with him, it's very, very mild, almost undetectable.
Right.
And, he's 12 or maybe he's 15 now. So I think that early on was really helpful for him. Now, for me, it started when I was around 7, which I think is kind of a common thing.
Yeah, that's right around the time for me too.
Isn't that interesting? I don't, although I've researched, of course, and I'm not really into any of the so-called, medications that might help or whatever. Like, I don't like what these things are going to do to me in other ways. But also, my tics are not so severe that I get physical pain. I heard you guys talking about neck pain. I'm like, holy crap!
Yeah,
that's severe. So I don't have that. But when I was a kid, it was violent. It was really, I was shaking my head up and down, left and right, and then and this happened maybe only a year after we moved to the Netherlands, which was a big surprise for me, being 7, and moving to a country where all of a sudden I didn't speak the language. They had only 2 channels of television, which started at 7 p.m., ended at 10:30, and it was the same guy in the news at 7. It was like no TV. They ate French fries with mayonnaise. I mean, there's a lot of trauma for me there. And when I had to go to Dutch school after 2 years. So here I am, the kid who doesn't really speak Dutch. I didn't know where I fit in, and I had Tourette's. It was tough, man. It was like, I had a lot of hangups for a long time.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny you say it that way because I feel like I'm always kind of hyper conscious of this feeling of chaos around me and kind of how cumbersome the whole world is and how rickety the whole world is. And I kind of have this anxiety about it. Just, I think maybe about kind of going out in public in general of just like anything could happen right now, like what's going to happen. And then being hyper conscious of myself and how I'm going to fit into all of that and how viable I am with it. And it just, I went to, sometimes it works. Like sometimes the chaos kind of works because you can blend in with it and your tics, even if you do have something that kind of feels severe, if everything around you kind of feels alien too, it's almost kind of a weird accidental comfort, at least for me. I'm just speaking for myself. But so being young, was this, and I've heard you say that your dad had some symptoms as well. Was this something that you and your family talked about, or was this kind of the thing where it's like, let's just tuck it underneath and not worry about it?
No, sadly, I didn't even know that they had gotten a TS. I'm going to use TS now. I didn't even know that I'd gotten a TS diagnosis. I learned, maybe only 3 years ago. My dad was on his way out. He passed away a year ago. And actually, one of my sisters, he told one of my sisters, it was always known as Dad's gidget. For gidget. I don't even know why it was called a gidget.
Okay.
And that's what it would be. And then it's like, oh, you got a gidget, just like Dad. I'm like, and that, crazy, isn't it? Now it makes
sense somehow.
He says that he never had it until a certain event happened in his life, which is very shocking. It was an enormous trauma for him. And he said that that's when he developed it. And now I don't know if that's true because I was either not there or too young or, not born.
Yeah.
So that was always his story, that's how he developed it.
Yeah.
And it, in a way, it didn't help our relationship long term, or even throughout the years at all. There was no camaraderie about it. It was definitely not really spoken about. Oh, you just got a gidget.
Yeah.
Not
Gotcha.
even the proper name, man. And I'm not even the proper name. How lame is that?
I gotta think about how to spell that, because I feel like I need to use that in some way.
I think it's GIDGET, gidget.
I like it.
Hey, wait a minute, I should register gidget.com real quick.
Oh man, yeah, someone's gonna grab that up if you don't. So I guess kind of growing up, so was this something that you put efforts into, I guess, keeping people from being aware of with you, or was it something you just couldn't help and people picked up on it? Or, I guess, did this figure into your personality, your friends, that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Super conscious. I think that I've learned throughout the years that what I think is very, very noticeable, all caps, most people don't notice. My tics are not so severe that, it's just not something you see me and see tics first. You'll pick up on it if you're tuned into it. Of course, with me, it shifts, it changes. It's eye blinking. It's, neck straining. Yeah. It's in different places. So I have learned to suppress it. That's why radio was so good for me. I started in radio. I built my first radio transmitter. I loved it. I could sit at home. I could be relaxed because I didn't have to worry if I was ticking or not, kind of in my own world. CB radio. I'm still I'm a general class ham radio licensed operator. I've always loved radio. Yeah. And by pure fluke, I got onto television, which is pretty much the worst thing you can say to someone with TS. It's like, hey man, and now go on TV and don't let millions of people see that you have Tourette.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, because it's kind of funny, because I have a radio background as well, and it was fine because I could do these pre-recorded segments. I could edit out any vocal tics that I had, and it'd be no big deal, and nobody was looking at me, so the pressure was off. But so I was a newspaper journalist for a pretty long time, and there would be times where I would be asked to go on TV on like the statewide sort of TV channel of record talking about politics, and I hated it. It was terrifying to me. I had anxiety anyway, but like I was dually thinking about what I was supposed to be saying to come off like a smart person who knows what he's talking about, but also what are these people thinking when they're looking at me? Do I look like a freak? Am I doing? And it was so off-putting, and I guess I kind of got used to it. That's the wrong way to say it. I just sort of accepted it and did it. But when you were getting onto TV, and MTV and everything, I mean, was this an open conversation for you at that time? Did people know this about you or point it out to you? Or
No. In fact, many people have contacted me. I went on Rogan in March, and I first mentioned that because Rogan is intense. It's like, okay, I'm going to sit with this guy for 3.5 hours with the camera on me all the time. I got a tic. I can't help it. But what I don't want is people going, what the fuck is wrong with Adam? Now, of course, when I said it, it relieved me. It relieved, there's tens of thousands of comments on a Rogan video. Yeah. And now I actually got to laugh along as someone would say, wow, man, what's wrong with Curry? Is he backing up his hard drive every time he blinks? And and then someone else would come in and say, oh man, he's got Tourette Syndrome. Oh, fuck, I'm sorry, dude. And so, and it became completely normalized. I was like, wow. Yeah. And because I said it, everyone went like, okay, whatever. And they got beyond it. And this is, it was 55 when this happened.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. So back in the day, now MTV was really easy. I did television in Europe before, but MTV was great because the segments are kind of limited in time. So, it's 2 minutes, and I can do that. I can not tick and kind of get past thinking about it for 2 minutes. And that's even what I think I'm not ticking. And I look at the segment later like, oh crap, I was ticking. Right. But at least I forgot about it. So really, my whole life has not been discussed that much until the podcast, and until I discovered how liberating it was. And so and since I've talked about it for years, I get parents emailing me and saying, well, our daughter has it, our son has it. What do you think? And I give them the same advice: talk about it, be open about it. I like to say, oh, that was a good one. Shit, and it just lightens the mood. It's not going to heal the ticking per se, but it heals the overall person, I think, and that calms you down. And that just by definition, we all know, oh, I'm relaxed, and so nothing's happening, and it's better. At least that's my experience, because I really don't know many other people with TS. But when I do meet them, or up until now, it's also kind of not really discussed. And it's an odd thing. It's a very odd thing.
But it makes sense. When we were talking about A.D. Smith at the beginning of the episode, and just sort of the energy aspect of it, So because I'm curious, I searched the archives on YouTube and I relived some of the old MTV stuff.
Oh boy!
But in terms of Tourette, I mean, you were really smooth on camera, which, as we were saying, is not unusual for Touretters to kind of hyper focus and get in the zone.
And he had the same. He has the same with his Amazon show.
Exactly.
He can drill down, focus, do the segment, and he's ticking before and he's ticking right after. And it was really heartwarming. So I was like, holy shit, this is a guy just like me, except for that he's British, gay, and a sommelier. It's like every other aspect of this guy is me.
Yeah.
Is me. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I watched the YouTube version of the podcast you did with Joe recently. And, you could see the ticking. It was apparent, the head nodding, the jerking. But after having just kind of explained what it is, that's been addressed, you can just kind of be on the ball and not worry about it. And
exactly.
You were on. It was a great discussion.
Yeah. Now, we were also really, really stoned. So that, that can affect it. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less.
Yeah.
If I'm tired, it's more, I guess. I'd love to know a little bit more about what's actually happening. I've always said, well, I've got shit firing in my brain, and no one really has any ideas. They got drugs, but no thanks.
Yeah, the science is coming along pretty well on it. And as far as medications, there's still nothing direct for TS. There's always research and stuff like that being done, but one of the, I guess, the most promising things that's happening right now is a non-medical or non-pharmaceutical approach called comprehensive behavioral intervention for tics. And it's basically just kind of like a cognitive kind of exercise to learn how to identify what triggers you.
CBT kind of thing, counting tics or something like that?
It's similar, yeah. It's basically identifying the impulse to tic and then kind of negotiating with it. And I'm speaking very generally. But there are some cool approaches, and it's almost kind of like tricking the brain out of ticking in a way. And but of course, like the thing with it is with TS, there are so many other companion diagnoses like anxiety, depression, things that are probably a lot more severe in people's lives than just ticking. And so that's where the other medications kind of come in. And
right.
And there are a lot of complaints. I didn't like the medications that I was on for Tourette. It kind of zombified me. And
did it work? Did it work though? Did it reduce the ticking?
It would do that, but it would sort of, like baby with the bathwater type thing, where I would just, I had to kind of have the conversation with myself of like, is this really worth it? Or are my tics so bad that I want to kind of destroy these other parts of my life? And maybe destroy is too heavy of a word, but it's definitely the risk reward type thing, the give and take. And that can be frustrating.
It's so different for everybody. It's like, when you were talking about physical pain in your neck, it's like, okay, that's fucked up. That's severe.
Yeah, that's definitely legitimate. And, there's kind of a narrative that goes along, especially with a lot of young people, where Tourette has kind of become a pride point, and the superpower thing is definitely kind of taken on. And I love that. But I would never sort of, I guess, tell anybody their life that like, you just need to accept this. You don't need medication. I mean, it's so different for everybody, like you were saying. And the thing with tics too is like, tics can fluctuate. Some days you'll have really bad tic days, and other days it's not so big of a deal. So what's happening when you're taking the medication? Is the medication working, or is it just your Tourette being weird? And
right.
Do you deal with other things like that in your life? The anxiety, sleep issues, OCD, depression, things like that?
No. OCD, I guess OCD, when I was younger, the got to touch the wall, the light, got to switch it 3 times, had some of that going on, some typical stuff. I used to have like some OCD type-ish tics where I felt like I had to slap my thigh with 3 fingers. This is fucking crazy. I've never told anyone about this. I'm sure people have seen it. But it's all kind of just a variation of the same thing that's going on. To me, it feels like, it's the same. Yeah. The impulse is the same. It's just manifesting in a different way. And what I have tried over the years is, okay, on camera, the eye blinking is annoying. Let's try to move it to my leg. Let's try to put it over there. And I can control it to some degree. I can do that, but I also negotiate with myself. Is it worth all this effort and energy that I'm doing trying to suppress it at this very moment versus just being me and forgetting about it in the knowledge? And this is, again, kind of the big oh wow for me, having been on different video and television platforms, is people really, really don't see as much as you think they do.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's it. It's still hard for me to believe, but people the number of people who've come up to me and said, "Wow, man, I never really knew that. I never noticed that with you."
Same thing with me. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just something that, take it from someone who's really been in the public eye, really out there for a long, long time. And most people have no idea. So, well, yeah, Tourette, really? Dude, haven't you looked at me ever? How long have you talked with me? No. Yeah, I guess I see it. And that's just people who, that's how poor we are with taking in our worlds,
Yeah.
People focus on what they think is important. Maybe they look at me, they look at my clothes or whatever. It's not what you think.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, going back to, I usually would not watch the TV segments that I did just out of fear of just being depressed for the rest of the night of oh my God, man, I did horribly.
But true depression or just fucked up about it?
Yeah. Just kind of just being down on myself
because I'd have the same. I'd have an interview with Mick Jagger, and then reluctantly, okay, I'm going to watch this. And I'm not listening to the interview. I'm like,
yeah.
Can you see my tick? Can you see my tick?
Yep. Yeah, and people are so in their own worlds now too, especially just the way people walk down the street, just kind of looking at their phones. I mean, there's a lot of, even then I'm still kind of I'm always hyperconscious, and I think I'm always going to be, but the more, I guess, understanding and stock I put into, people don't really care. And if they do, who cares? It's going to be out of their mind 5 minutes later when they see something else or they see a tweet or whatever it is. And there's so much pressure. I feel like a lot of the pressure of TS is just us thinking about what other people are thinking. And to what degree is that stress and pressure kind of negatively impacting our lives versus, and it is true. I mean, society's been kind of, has been tough on people with TS, kind of making a comedy routine out of it. And, that's tough to kind of grow up knowing that what you got is kind of seen as a joke. But in the real world, I mean, when I did finally come out, so to speak, and tell people I have TS, it was exactly as you were saying. I was like, oh God, I had no idea. Are you sure? Are you serious?
Yeah.
and since then, I felt so much more comfortable ticking around the people I work with. And it's no big deal. They're supportive. They don't point it out every 5 seconds to me. It's it's no big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is, to me, that's really the medicine. It's just the people you're going to deal with. And you might as well, it's not all, I don't necessarily think it's, if you say, hi, nice to meet you. Look, I've got Tourette. Here's the deal. Depending on your severity. But, there's ways to ease into it. If it's really that severe, I'm sure the person introducing you might give someone a clue or something. But it's not with everything, everyone's got something. I mean, this is it really, someone once said to me, I think it kind of makes you look interesting.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, there's something going on with you. There's something more going on that's interesting. And I think people key into that as well. And I always took that to heart. Maybe total crap, but I felt good about it.
No, I think there is truth to that. I think, so when I did start speaking to the people around me, my colleagues, people like that about this, or when the word came out that I had it, there's this kind of empathy type thing that comes out that people identify in you. And it's like, okay, he's got something that people misunderstand and he might be able to listen to me about my problem. And people have kind of opened up to me about the things in their life or things that are happening in their family. And just because I think they know that I've kind of been there with something that's difficult or misperceived. And there's, I think, a lot of power to that too.
Hey, man, as a straight old white male, I'm glad I got a victim card to play. Hey, man, back off. I got Tourette, okay? You can use the TS card whenever you want. Sorry, man. Sorry. Seriously, everyone's got something today. Well, now I'm part of that groovy party. You can't mess with me.
Well, there literally is a card you can get from the Tourette Association that says you have Tourette Syndrome, so we can you can be a card-carrying member.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can I sue anybody for not having their building right?
I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say. Hey guys, we'll get back to the conversation in just a minute, but real quick, I want to invite you guys to a big event I'll be emceeing on October 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can sit wherever you want, you can wear whatever you want. It's the virtual gala with the Tourette Association of America. They asked me to MC this, and I'm pumped. It's a big fundraiser for the Tourette Association so they can continue their work for the community. Science, research, awareness, education, sponsoring Tourette's podcast, all kinds of resources that are freely available to you that can make a big difference in your life. I'll be joined by a number of special guests, including the Mazzarisi brothers, Caden and Jace, young men I got to talk to over Zoom just recently, and they told me how having Tourette actually makes them popular at school. For real, that's what they said, because it's a rare thing to have, but still, millions and millions of people have it, so they've got a posse. Caden and Jace are on deck to open up the gala. And by the way, they're also spokesmen for Tourette's podcast. Do you guys want to tell everybody to listen to Tourette's podcast so they understand what you go through and so they understand more about Tourette syndrome? You could tell all your friends right now to listen to Tourette's podcast.
Go look at Tourette's podcast to see our life. Yeah. So make sure to do that, and we will see you back at the 2020 Virtual Gala.
The Virtual Gala, October 29th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tourette.org/gala. Okay, back to the conversation.
Tell me about the association, because I really didn't know about it. How many people are a member? What do they do? Because you're sponsored by the Tourette Association of America, I think, right?
Yep. They've been fantastic. So they're the biggest association that deals specifically with Tourette and other kinds of tic disorders. So, there's other sort of, it's all kind of the same life experience of having a tic disorder, whether it's Tourette or something else. So they do some lobbying, a lot of advocacy work. They do fundraising for research, and they've been doing a lot of outreach, which is why they came to the podcast, because this existed before the sponsorship, and I just kind of did it on my own. And then cool. we started talking, and it was just a good logical pairing. But they have really good leadership. They're based in New York, actually, and they actually have as we speak anyway, they got a gala coming up, and they just had their annual conference earlier this year in virtual fashion, of course. But yeah, they're great. There's a lot of I guess historically, a lot of the Tourette advocacy work has been toward, children and their parents, and it is characterized as kind of like a childhood onset disorder. But, you and I are talking right now about being adults living with it. Yeah. We still very much have it. So they've put a lot of focus into the adult population, and there's been a lot of demand for that. They're fantastic. Yeah.
Interesting. And how many members?
I mean, it's all across the U.S., but interestingly, Tourette is a pretty underdiagnosed thing. I think statistically, it's 1 out of every 100 people. So even a small town may have a good handful of people who have it, but undiagnosed. And that could be a variety of reasons, whether it's sort of the shame of getting the diagnosis or our lack of access to healthcare, or, whatever it happens to be. But it's not as uncommon, I think, as the narrative kind of makes it out to be. But a lot of potential members, we could say that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. That's what I thought was funny when I told Rogan, I said, lots of people have Tourette, like Steve Mnuchin.
Yeah, I heard you say that. I didn't know that.
Treasury Secretary. Yeah, and he's very good at suppressing it. I've seen him go on for quite a period, not ticking at all. But then, he's in front of either a congressional panel or Senate panel. That's a long time. You're sitting there for hours.
Yeah.
And, you can see it. And he's got, neck tics. And what Rogan said was, yeah, he's got a really hot wife. I said, yes, exactly. That's how we roll. That's how we roll in TS, boy. That's right. We get the hot women. It's true. And I want people to know that. That's why I brought that up. I want kids to know, hey, look at that guy. He is the Secretary of the Treasury, and he's got a hot, like kind of exactly the kind of wife that a movie star would have, and whatever. It's fantastic. Your life is not over.
It's a good point that, your life is not over. I get, and I've said this on past episodes before, that sometimes, I've gotten emails from parents whose children were just diagnosed. I have a 7-year-old son. He was just diagnosed. We're terrified about his life ahead. What's the life expectancy? All this stuff.
My goodness. Oh my goodness. Really? Oh.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, first off, just
calm down.
Yeah. Calm down. Don't worry about that part of it. Let's talk about some people. Let's talk about Adam Curry. Let's talk about Steve Mnuchin or whoever.
Right.
I mean,
right.
It's not it's hard. And depending on the severity, it can be really hard. And you can get disenfranchised from negative judgments, having a hard time finding a job and all that. But there's also, there are so many different things, so many variables in life that can kind of steer you,
and of everything we have learned over the past, since the internet, really, we've accelerated learning of just what everybody kind of can have. Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff. I mean, yeah, okay, TS is bad. I don't know. I wouldn't want irritable bowel syndrome. There's all kind, and there's lots of people have that. Lots of people have all kinds of things. And I think we've really learned to, as human beings, to kind of get much better with it. Going back to growing up with jokes about Tourette. I love laughing with and about people and their tics.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man. That's a good one. That's funny.
Yeah.
And it lightens the mood. And because everybody who knows someone or sees, someone with TS ticking, they, it's funny, but you can't laugh. That's the worst thing ever. So I also like to give people the license to laugh with me about it. Like,
yeah,
look at that,
Yeah, I'm on board with you. So there's sort of like the mean-spirited kind of bullying type stuff, which is it's not cool, but it can that can also kind of give you perspective on your life too. But when it's just you're with your group of friends and they're pointing stuff out about you, and I mean it's a different way to talk about it, and it's maybe the easiest on ramp to talking about it with people who don't really know what it is. I mean, a joke can turn into a good conversation, and you can have a friendly nature about it. And there are times in my life where I've had really defensive reactions to it, and I've learned to kind of get away from that. And if people do have some kind of misunderstanding about it, but they seem like reasonable people, they're going to be able to get it after I say 5 or 10 sentences about it if necessary.
Yeah. Now, and I want to reiterate, because I've seen people with TS that is really severe, particularly the swearing. Very loud vocal tics. I mean, so I don't want to downplay how messed up that appears to be.
Absolutely.
Because that seems life limiting. There's literally stuff that, your body is moving so severely that it's almost, that can be hazardous. So, and I don't know what the percentage is, so I don't want anyone to be really upset with me. But I think still, in general, all human beings are the same. And even though it may look like, these really severe cases, I think if you can still have just a good, hearty, enlightening laugh about it, and it for me, it always makes me feel better, and the people around me just, okay, all right, well, okay, because it's just what it is, man. It's it's not anyone who doesn't see it otherwise is just it's just ignorance, because they don't know, because it's not talked about. It's really, really weird that this is such an unspoken what is it, disorder? Is it disordered? It's not a disease.
It's a disorder. Yeah.
Disorder. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, but it's true. It's what's that MLK quote about? I'm going to totally botch this, but he said something about people are scared of one another because we don't talk to one another, and
Sure.
that's we just kind of keep these valleys between us because we don't kind of cross it and shake hands and just have a conversation. And it's and again, these are things that have taken me, I think, a pretty good time to realize, where I have to crawl out of my shell and realize it's going to be okay. And it's like going outside of the dome in Logan's Run. You have all these fears, and then you get out there and you're like, okay, I can do this. And the hyperconsciousness, it stays with me, and but and also kind of a lateral thought, and this may be way out there, and let me know if it is, but something I know about you is that you're really protective and aware when it comes to your life, your data, your privacy in the digital age, intellectual property. Maybe I'm way out there in asking this, but that seems like the kind of mentality that something like Tourette can lend to, like the perspective that something as hyperconscious and guarded as TS can make a person. Am I way out there on this, or is there something to that it can figure into how you become kind of a master of situational awareness, I guess, in the digital age in this sense?
Yes. So on one hand, it's not because I'm hiding anything or that I feel like I'm being looked at.
Yeah.
I actually completely understand what security risks there are in the connected world.
Mm-hmm.
What you said, I think you said visualization. See, I view TS more as a feature, not a bug. So I think that because of how my brain works, and whether that's TS related or not, I'm going to give it that credit today.
Mm-hmm.
I can actually visualize systems. So when I think of code, when I think of how things are connected, how networks are connected, how data flows, that is completely visual to me. Cryptocurrencies, all of these things, I understand what the code is doing, and not just in a general overview of the steps, but I can see the processes where they go.
Mm-hmm.
And so and that's just a skill I've developed. And I can also, I developed a skill. I'm telling you, these are superpowers. This is a huge awakening for me.
Mm-hmm.
Reading legislation. I'm very good at it. Early on, I was told that I was good at neural networks. I'm good at identifying patterns. And I took my company public in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on NASDAQ. It wasn't a huge raise, but it was a little bit before the .com bubble and the blow up and all that. So actually made money and got out okay. But and we had 700 people. It was a pretty big organization. And I was just looking at the financial report, which is this huge pivoting table spreadsheet, in which I'm not any kind of academic, but I said, what's going on over here? Those numbers look weird. And it turned out there was some kind of weird phone overseas calling operation going on that was, sapping out a lot of money. And so I attribute that to the way I'm wired, and why that is, I'm not sure. So once I kind of understood what's really happening with social media, the algorithms. Now, granted, I don't know exactly what the algorithms do, but I do understand what they're capable of, and I can come up with a lot of different scenarios. And each time that's confirmed, I think I go into for my mind, a fact-based conspiracy. Well, I call myself a conspiracy therapist because I really just analyze what's going on from every angle.
Yeah.
And with privacy, it's not even about privacy, but how we are being nudged. Yeah. How we are behaving in our lives. You spoke earlier about people on the street, they're looking down at their phone, they're walking. I mean, I play a game with myself. I give points to myself for every person I see standing on the street holding a phone in their hand. I get 2 points if they're looking at the phone while standing on the street, 3 if they're walking while looking at the phone, and 5 if they're in the car on the phone. And you'll be 100 like points within 5 minutes, So, but that's behavioral change, and it would be naive to think that people who use social networks and their true capability, which is called targeting, but combined with right messaging, you can actually, back to the origins of today's marketing and PR and advertising, Edward Bernays, who basically got an entire generation of women to stick a flaming hot sticks in their mouth in the form of cigarettes. He nudged women's behavior. I don't know if you know the story, but he had the women walking in the parade, and he had them all smoking, I think, a Lucky Strike, and that made it okay for women to then smoke, and that kicked off women smoking in America. So that advertising is now super refined. Particularly Facebook is very good at it. Yeah. But the criminal organizations and political organizations sometimes are the same thing. they use the same, like political advertising. Now, we really don't believe that the Trump ads are completely true and not somewhat accentuated about Biden and vice versa. Yet it's being said, and when it's kind of being said that guy eats babies and drinks their blood for breakfast, it nudges you. So I feel all that and how you respond to it and the things that can then be. I don't know if you've seen the Social Dilemma is a pretty good example of this. It's a Netflix.
I did watch that.
Netflix
Yeah,
show.
late night. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty real. I mean, that's the technical version of that is completely in place and working and can have good results. So my staying away from technology was just what I call OTG, or off the grid. It's really just making less data to be used against me. It's not necessarily less data for people to send me information about products I actually want, but I don't want them knowing so much about me that they can actually influence my behavior too much. And the phone is the computer is one version of it, but the phone, because it includes location and proximity and who you're with and who you're near, and how long you're doing something and what your credit card bills are. Yeah, that's then we being controlled, I think, is taking place with most people already to some degree.
I definitely relate to you in the way you describe that, and being able to kind of see where the tendrils go. And when I was a news reporter, I was a legislative reporter. So I would have to read legislation and try to figure out, what lobbying groups are going to, have some kind of concern with this, or who is this going to affect, and where does this go 5 years from now, and that sort of thing. And that's, it's seeing this big picture kind of thing. I write songs almost in the same way. I've been kind of like a musical person my whole life. And it's like, I kind of know what the logical is the wrong word, but I know what the logical next step is after this one little piece I write. And okay, if I do this, it's going to be generic. If I do this, it might be more interesting. And it's just kind of like tracing these lines or just following them. It's almost like they just lay themselves out before you. And you have gotten me thinking a lot more about what I put out there, and and just like you said, it's not because I'm hiding things. It's just kind of wondering where it's all going, and also kind of not knowing kind of freaks me out too. And you've actually got me thinking about ditching the smartphone and returning to the flip phone, but I have to say that's also mainly because of my ADHD. It's so bad that I waste so much time just going from thing to thing on my phone and giving away all kinds of data in the process. But it's to the point where I just wish I didn't even have that option.
Yeah. So I've been using Alcatel Go Flip 3, I think it's called. The T-Mobile has it, Verizon has it. And it pretty much does, you can take a call, you can place a call. It uses KaiOS, which is a derivative of open source kind of Linux basis. They of course, Google had to get their hooks in them, so there is an investment from Google, so you can actually activate Google Assistant and just say, send a message to Ben and then dictate your message. But of course, then you're basically giving all of that information to Google. But if you don't use it, it's not connected and it's not grabbing any of your data. And you really don't want that. You want to be able to receive a text, send a text. They have some predictive type texting, which is, it's all sucked. But that's kind of the point. Yeah. It's like, do I really need to send this now? Do I just stop what I'm doing? I can't do it while I'm driving. I have to pull over, wait, then I'm going to do this, or can it wait until later? And it turns out 9.5 times out of 10, you can do it later.
Is there an aspect of this that's also, for me, I have an interest in kind of simplifying my life and kind of downsizing things, just limiting my options in a way, like just self-imposing some walls around myself. Maybe that's the wrong way to say it, but I think you know what I mean. Where my brain darts in so many different directions at one time that the nature of things today and consumer electronics and everything, there are so many options. It's like with this podcast right here, I could take my voice audio and edit it to some infinite extent with different kinds of plugins and EQ things, and I could just spend all day on it. I don't have to. It's going to be fine no matter what. But it just kind of, all that stuff just kind of pulls you in, and just the way my brain works and this addictive personality I have really caters to me. And there's something too about just kind of simplifying my life and reducing sort of my, whatever tech is doing to me. Does that speak to you in any way?
In a different way, I think.
Yeah. There may be no way of getting away.
Well, no, I'm old enough to have really been involved in the first computers. For me, that was the Sinclair ZX80. I built my first modem. I was like 16, I think.
Wow.
Acoustic modem. I think it was, that initial one was probably 35 baud each way. I mean, we're talking a long time ago. So I kind of got into them, and if anything, my understanding of technology and having, understanding how to create media and how to communicate things has benefited me in many ways. So I remember that I used to kind of tell the computer what to do, and I've gotten increased. Basically, the capabilities of today's, not the power of the computer, but the operating systems, the applications, or on the phone, the apps, are really not all built to help me accomplish the task in the fastest possible way. And that's done on purpose because, the app developer wants to keep you locked into their app, and they want to give you a reason to pay for it or buy an upgrade or whatever. It's a whole business.
Yep.
This is why Apple is doing the whole app, and Google have their own ecosystems. They really are in control of how you use your stuff. And which is, again, the tools just aren't keeping up with what I need. So I went down the path of Linux, specifically really more command line. I got tired of user interfaces, for tasks that are data driven. So I collect data from websites all day long. All day long, I'm bookmarking things, I'm tagging things, and I have a whole system built specifically to have that. So then that kind of comes into a funnel, and then when it's show day, because it's a topical program, things are kind of organized, and I can arrange it to get a show done. But that's all data driven, and so in a full day cycle, moving the mouse 50 times to click an email or reply or whatever. No. I just need quick commands, macros. I need stuff to render really quickly. If I really need to see the attachment, I can open it. But if I don't have to, if it's just text. So, I've kind of moved away from what is being given to me for free in exchange for my data, and move towards anything that would take minimal effort to set up. For instance, noagendasocial.com is a social network for people who listen to our show, and it's built on Mastodon. So it's very much like Twitter, except it doesn't have any algorithms. So it's a very peaceful place. And you read from top to bottom. And when you reach the thing you've read before, that's the end. You can go up to the top, maybe something new. But it's also federated. So it's our own little club of people. And then, we can also communicate with people who also have a server like that. And it's seamless. It's only a question of connecting to them. And then it all kind of works. And so I find that much more enjoyable than the experience I get on Twitter. I got off Facebook a long time ago. Reddit was also, the algorithms are sucking you in. That's why you have to go back. And that's why the smartphone is dangerous. Even if you just remove all apps from your phone, certainly anything that notifies you, there's a number of other things you can do to really stop a lot of tracking, etc. But just getting rid of apps and getting rid of notifications. For instance, Slack. Slack is the death of the millennial generation. Yeah. I think it's bringing them down. It's going to kill you. It's going to depress you. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing. Very profitable, of course, because it's like crack. To me, it's the BlackBerry of this age.
Yeah. I'm a photographer, and the Instagram notifications are so tempting, but they are always, it's possible some of my neck pain is literally from that, of just looking down or looking over at my phone. And, and then the excitement of it gets me ticking, and it really does play into my life. I don't feel like I'm overanalyzing this.
So think about that, it's well known that just on notifications alone. So let's say you check it, you've got 2 notifications, and then you decide to leave it, you lock your screen, beep, 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 you get 5 notifications.
Mm-hmm.
That's not by accident. That's not all of a sudden 5 people liked your post. No, that's the algorithm going, bring him back.
Yep.
Bring him back. He closed his phone, bring him back. 5 notifications. Boom, click open. He's back. That shit's real.
Yeah.
And that impacts your TS.
Yeah.
It does. Do I need to say more? What more do you need to know? There's no step 3.
So is this, I guess, the same kind of mentality and approach is what sort of led you to start podcasting? And I mean that in every possible sense of the word, start podcasting. I mean, were you just kind of taking it back and seeing where things are going and being like, this is something else I got to do?
Yeah. Because you know what? Because of you, Ben, and this conversation, I can now with great certainty say that Tourette Syndrome led to the creation of podcasting, because once again, it was my ability to visualize an RSS feed with an iPod, mm-hmm. with some kind of way to point to a media file, a script that could download it without telling anyone, but only notifying the person that something was ready to play when it was downloaded and synced to the iPod, which is the way you used to do it.
Yeah.
Only in that way, I think that is part of my feature. It was able to visualize that, and it's not to me. It's like, oh, I could see it. I could actually see this taking place. That's all it takes. There's always got to be someone who just sees that. So I think, I think we can safely say Tourette started podcasting.
I hope everybody heard that right here on Tourette's podcast. That
Quote me on it. Definitely. It's definitely a part of it.
So as with the balance between being a feature and a bug, are there still negatives that you're seeing, or do you feel like Tourette is something that you've made peace with and you've kind of you've developed an understanding with it and you know how it's going to benefit you? Are there aspects that really kind of drive you crazy, or?
No, it's like sometimes the eye ticking, you actually can't see when you close your eyes, so mm-hmm. I have to not tick when I'm driving, which is okay.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to read something and I'll tick, and then my eye gets cloudy. So I'm trying to work on that one, move it to a different place.
Mm-hmm.
That's just something that's recent, pops up from time to time.
Yeah.
At this point in my life, oddly enough, if I were tick free, I think I would miss it.
Yeah.
It's a part of who I am.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a part. I wish I had better control over it, but then would it be? Then I think if you have real control over it, then it's not ticking. It's something. That's why it's a feature, man. I don't know. Things are firing in my brain, and if I'm able to subconsciously or unconsciously redirect that energy, as we started the conversation off, and I'm redirecting it into developing a certain skill or achieving something that I want to achieve, I'll take it. Well,
man, we are coming up on an hour, and that's hard to believe because this feels like 20 minutes to me.
Well, I'm a professional podcaster, Ben. That's what I do.
So, is there anything I haven't asked about that you think is significant to a conversation like this, or anything about how TS impacts your life that you think is worth sharing?
No, nothing I can think of offhand. And I really came to this conversation, not overthinking it, not really not thinking about it at all. I prefer that if we're just going to, I think the best podcasts are between people who have a conversation. There's something interesting to say. I just hope that, I would hope that there's more people who feel comfortable enough to talk to you about it on your show.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, the idea of, well, hold on a second, look at this person, and here, how about this lady over here, and this guy, and this is not the end of the world, and here's experiences that many people have found to be helpful, or ways to look at it. And so, if anything, I think I've communicated my message, which is it's a feature, not a bug. That's really what it is, and that can be beautiful, even in software or in the human brain.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, just to sort of put a seal on the circle, it's, we started off by talking about getting it out there, and you can really diffuse it. It's not that big of a deal. The more conversations we have like this and the more people hear them, the less of a big deal it's going to be. And it's important. It's obviously important to my life. It's important to yours. It's a feature, just as you said. But for the people who are really struggling with it, it can make a world of difference to hear somebody else talk about it in a way that they can relate to. And so I really appreciate you coming on to talk about it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and thanks for doing the show. It's important work, and I think these things do make a difference. So thank you for doing that.
Thanks for listening. Special thanks to Adam for taking time out to open up with us. This definitely goes on the greatest hits album for the podcast. Please do me a favor and share it on social media. I'm going to load up in the show notes with this episode at tourettespodcast.com with links to Adam's work, social media, and so on. Thank you, Adam. That was such a pleasure. tourettespodcast@gmail.com is where you can send feedback about this episode or anything else you want. Sophia in the UK runs the Tourette's Podcast discussion group on Facebook with hundreds and hundreds of members, more all the time. Please join at Tourette's Pod on Twitter, Tourette's Podcast on Instagram, and if you want to pitch in a little individual support to the show, you can do so at patreon.com/Tourette's Podcast. And if you do, I will give you an executive producer credit, like one I'll give right now to Jerry Gidner, who has long been a really cool person to get to know and talk with on the socials. Patreon supporters, let me know if it's okay for me to name you on the podcast, because I would love to. The primary sponsor of Tourette's Podcast is the Tourette Association of America, online at tourette.org. And please mark your calendars and join me October 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the virtual gala, an important fundraiser for the Tourette Association. Supporting them supports research, community, education, awareness, this podcast, and more. Tourette.org/gala. This podcast is part of the Geeks Rising Network, online at geeksrising.com, where you can find this and other podcasts about culture, well-being, technology, all from solid people I'm lucky to associate with. They bring this podcast to a bigger audience, and I'm grateful. My voice is on the ropes. I've got this new medication that's really hitting me in the throat. Glad to be back, though, and I will talk to you again soon. Really great season ahead. Thanks, y'all. This is Ben.